Part 1, 1500 words. The city train station was always full of noise, rolling suitcases, loud announcements, busy footsteps, but in the middle of all that movement sat a boy everyone passed without really seeing. He appeared no older than 12 or 13, with a worn-out jacket that looked 2 sizes too big and shoes that had clearly traveled many miles. His hair was messy, his face a little dusty, and he carried a small backpack that he kept close to his chest as if everything he owned was inside it. Every day, he chose the same corner near the public piano. The piano was painted in bright colors, inviting people to play a song while they waited for their trains. Tourists often took pictures with it. Children banged on the keys for fun. Some skilled players used it to show off before leaving the station. But the boy never touched it. He only watched. He listened closely each time someone played, his eyes following their hands as they moved up and down the keys. Sometimes he even closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. And though he stayed completely still, something in his expression changed whenever music filled the air, as if he was remembering something important, something hidden deep inside him. People walked past him with quick steps. Some glanced at him, then looked away fast, pretending they hadn't seen him. Others whispered quietly to each other, thinking he couldn't hear. A few kind travelers left food beside him, but most simply avoided him, not because he had done anything wrong, but because life had made him invisible. Every morning, he arrived early, long before the morning rush. He found a spot on the cold bench, pulled his knees close, and let the warm air from passing trains brush against him. He watched groups of friends laugh together, parents guiding their children by the hand, and workers carrying briefcases as they hurried to their jobs. He didn't envy them, he just observed quietly, as if the world were a movie he was watching from the side. The piano always stood at the center of that world. It was the only thing that seemed to pull his attention away from everything else. Whenever someone sat down to play, his eyes softened. Some players hit the keys roughly, producing clumsy melodies. Others played beautifully, filling the station with calm and grace. The boy studied all of them, but he never tried to join in. He feared what might happen if someone asked him to stop or if they laughed at him for trying. The last thing he wanted was to become a reason for people to stare. One afternoon, as the station filled with the echo of distant footsteps and the smell of warm food from nearby stalls, a group of teenagers gathered around the piano. They weren't serious players, they were just having fun, pressing random keys and laughing loudly. The boy watched from his usual corner, his backpack hugged against his chest. The teenagers didn't notice him at first, but when one of them glanced around, he saw the boy watching them. He nudged his friends and whispered something that made them laugh even harder. They didn't say anything cruel out loud, but their expressions changed. It was the look people give when they think they know someone's entire story just by seeing them. The boy lowered his gaze, pretending to focus on something else. He didn't want to ruin anyone's fun. He didn't want trouble. He just wished he could listen without feeling like he was being judged for it. When the teenagers left, the piano sat unused for a long time. People hurried by, too busy to stop. The boy kept glancing at it, as though debating something privately. His hands stayed tucked into his sleeves to keep warm, but every now and then, his fingers twitched as if they longed to move freely across the keys. The station lights flickered as the evening arrived. The loud afternoon noises faded into softer sounds, and the once busy station became calmer. A few travelers waited on benches, scrolling through their phones. A janitor swept near the vending machines. The big information board clicked as it updated train schedules. The piano sat in the middle of it all, untouched. The boy looked at it again and whispered something only he could hear. Maybe it was a memory. Maybe it was a piece of courage asking to be let out. Whatever it was, he tried to ignore it. He wasn't used to being brave. He was used to staying quiet, staying hidden, staying safe. But his eyes kept drifting back to the piano. Late in the evening, a gentle rain began outside, making soft tapping sounds on the station roof. People walked in carrying umbrellas dripping water. The boy watched the raindrops trickle down the glass doors. He wasn't afraid of rain. He had slept through many storms, but something about the weather made him feel more alone than usual. A street performer entered the station soon after, carrying a small speaker and a case full of simple instruments. He often came there to play for coins, and he had a warm, easy smile that made people feel comfortable. He set up his things near the piano as usual. The boy recognized him. He had seen this performer many times and trusted him more than he trusted most people, not because they had ever spoken, but because the performer always treated everyone kindly, regardless of who they were. The performer started playing soft tunes on his guitar. His music wasn't perfect, but it was full of heart. Some travelers dropped coins into his case. Others simply smiled as they passed by. The boy listened quietly, enjoying the peaceful rhythm. When the performer finished a song, he took a short break and noticed the boy in the corner. It wasn't the first time he had seen him, but tonight something felt different. The boy seemed more restless, more drawn to the piano than usual. The performer watched him for a moment, curious. The boy's eyes weren't just watching the piano, they were yearning for it. And that small detail stirred something inside the performer. He wondered whether the boy wanted to play but was too shy or scared to try. He decided to walk toward him, but slowly, carefully. He didn't want to frighten him. "Hey," he said softly, stopping a few steps away so he wouldn't invade the boy's space. The boy looked up, startled. "You like the piano, don't you?" The boy hesitated, unsure how to answer. He looked at the piano, then at the performer, then lowered his head. His silence was enough of an answer. The performer smiled gently. "It's okay. You can be honest. I see you watching it every day." The boy's shoulders tightened as if he expected trouble, but the performer's kind tone kept him from running away. "You can try it if you want," the performer said. "No one is using it right now." The boy swallowed hard. His heart beat faster, not from fear of the man, but from fear of being seen. He shook his head quickly, as if the idea was impossible. The performer didn't push. "No pressure. It's just there if you ever feel like touching the keys, even for a second." The boy clutched his backpack tighter. His eyes drifted back to the piano again, betraying the truth his mouth was too scared to say. "I'll stay right here," the performer added. "No one will bother you. I promise." Something softened in the boy's expression. Maybe it was the gentle voice. Maybe it was the promise of safety. Maybe it was simply time. He didn't stand up yet. He didn't move an inch. But the idea of touching the piano no longer felt like a distant dream. It felt closer, so close that he could almost feel the smooth keys under his fingers. The performer walked back to his guitar and continued playing quietly, giving the boy space to think. The rain outside grew heavier, but the station felt warm. The boy stared at the piano again. And for the first time, he didn't look away. Part to 1,500 words. The rain outside continued to fall in steady streams, making soft tapping sounds that filled the quiet moments. Between the performer's gentle guitar notes, the boy sat still, watching the piano the way someone watches a door that might lead to a different life. He didn't stand up, but something inside him had started to change slowly, like a small flame flickering in the wind. The performer glanced at him now and then, never staring too long, never making the boy feel pressured. He simply played a calming tune, one that blended into the background of the station. Travelers continued to come and go, but the space around the piano seemed untouched by the rush. For a moment, the boy tried to ignore the piano and focus on his backpack instead. He opened it slightly, checking the few things he kept inside: an extra shirt, a small water bottle, and a folded piece of cloth. He handled them carefully, closing the bag again as though he had touched something delicate. These were the only things that belonged to him, and he protected them with quiet care. But even with the bag in his hands, he could not ignore the piano's pull. Every time a note came from the performer's guitar, it felt like a reminder that music existed, that it mattered, that it was still a part of him. Finally, after several minutes of silence, the performer spoke again. "You know," he said softly, "no one is going to judge you here. Sometimes the best moments come when we take a small chance, just a tiny one." The boy didn't answer. He stared at the ground, feeling the weight of the decision. The performer continued. "It doesn't have to be a whole song. You can touch one key, just one. If you don't like it, you can walk away. No one will laugh." The boy lifted his head slightly. The performer wasn't pushing. He wasn't teasing. He wasn't forcing. He was simply offering. The boy's fingers tightened around the strap of his backpack. He wasn't afraid of music. He was afraid of people. Afraid of what they might think. Afraid of being told to stop, or worse, being told he didn't belong. He had felt that way many times before, but something was different tonight. The station was quieter, the lights softer, the air warmer, and the performer's kindness felt real, not fake. Slowly, the boy placed his bag on the bench beside him. His feet touched the floor gently as he stood. It wasn't a bold movement. It wasn't confident. It was hesitant and unsure, but it was movement. The performer noticed but didn't react in a big way. He kept his focus on his guitar, pretending not to see. He didn't want to scare the boy back into his seat. The boy took one small step, then another. His shoes made almost no sound on the smooth floor. His heart beat faster with each step, and he kept glancing around to see if anyone was watching. But most people were busy waiting for trains, talking quietly, or scrolling on their phones. No one cared what a small boy was doing. He reached the piano and stopped. His hands hung at his sides as he stared at the instrument. It looked so clean, so bright, so far from the world he lived in. The keys were white and shiny, reflecting the lights above. The boy felt as though he was standing in front of something sacred. He reached out slowly, but before his fingers touched the keys, he pulled his hand back quickly. His breath shook. What if he wasn't as good as he remembered? What if he messed up? What if the performer regretted letting him try? His hand trembled slightly. The performer quietly set his guitar aside and walked a few steps closer, but he still stood far enough away to give the boy space. "It's all right," he said gently. "Nothing bad will happen. I'm right here." The boy looked at him briefly, then back at the piano. He took a slow breath. This time, he placed one hand on the edge of the piano, just the wooden surface. His fingertips traced the smooth paint, feeling the coolness beneath them. He closed his eyes for a brief moment, letting himself breathe. Then he lifted his hand and touched one single key. A soft note rang out. Light, simple, harmless. The boy opened his eyes. He looked at his own hand, surprised. The note had sounded exactly the way he imagined it would. He touched another key, another gentle sound. He felt something warm rise inside him. Not confidence, not yet, but memory. He remembered what the piano felt like, how it answered to him, how it never judged. His other hand slowly reached forward until both hands rested on the keys. His posture was stiff, unsure, but the moment his fingers pressed down again, the notes came out clearer. The performer watched quietly, his eyes softening with understanding. The boy wasn't playing a song yet, just testing the keys one by one, but each note seemed to awaken something inside him, bringing back pieces of a world he had lost. He closed his eyes again and pressed a few more keys, then a few more. Shapes of melodies started forming in his head, like shadows of songs he once knew. His shoulders relaxed just a little, his breathing steadied. And then his fingers began to move, not in a performance, but in a slow, searching motion, like someone feeling their way through the dark. He played the beginning of something soft and gentle, a tune that wasn't complete yet, but was full of feeling. It drifted through the air like a whisper. The performer held his breath, afraid even a sound would break the fragile moment. But the boy stopped suddenly. His hands froze. He stepped back quickly as though he had done something wrong. He looked down at the floor, avoiding the performer's eyes. "I'm sorry," he whispered, almost too quietly to hear. The performer's voice was warm and steady. "Sorry for what?" The boy didn't answer. "You didn't do anything wrong," the performer said. "You played beautifully." The boy shook his head, as if he didn't believe it. "Look at me," the performer said gently. The boy hesitated, then lifted his gaze. "There's nothing to be afraid of," the performer told him. "You have a gift." I could hear it, even in those few notes. The boy's eyes widened slightly. No one had said something like that to him in a very long time. "Do you want to try again?" the performer asked. The boy didn't speak, but his gaze drifted back to the piano. His fingers twitched slightly, as though they wanted to return to the keys. For several silent seconds, he simply stood there. Then he stepped forward again. He placed both hands on the piano once more. This time, he didn't hesitate as much. His fingers pressed down gently, and the melody he had started earlier returned, soft, smooth, and warm. The notes filled the space around him, growing richer with each movement of his hands. Travelers nearby began to look up from their phones. Some turned their heads, surprised to hear such a gentle tune coming from the middle of the station. They didn't know who was playing. They didn't know it was the same boy they often walked past. The performer watched with quiet awe. He could feel that this was just the beginning, that the boy was testing the water before diving in. And the boy, he was letting himself remember. Each note carried a small piece of his past moments, feelings, and memories he kept locked away. But tonight, they resurfaced in the form of music. He played until his hands began to grow tired. He stopped slowly, letting the last note fade into the air. He kept his hands on the keys for a moment longer. When he finally looked up, the performer was smiling gently. "See," he said softly, "you belong here." The boy didn't smile back, but his eyes softened. Something inside him had shifted, not just because he played the piano, but because someone had given him the chance. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he wasn't invisible, and he wasn't done yet. Part 3, 1500 words. The sound of the boy's gentle melody still floated in the air, soft and warm, even though he had stopped playing. For a long moment, he simply stood with his fingers resting lightly on the keys, as if he wasn't ready to leave the comfort of the piano. The performer stayed quiet too, not wanting to interrupt the fragile calm the boy had created. A few travelers who had heard the tune whispered to each other. Some looked around to see who had played, expecting to find an adult or a trained musician. Instead, they saw a small, thin boy standing beside the piano, his shoulders slightly hunched, as if unsure of what he had just allowed himself to do. He didn't look like someone with special talent. He looked like someone life had forgotten, and yet his music didn't match his situation at all. Slowly, the boy stepped back from the piano. His hands fell to his sides, and he took a tiny breath, almost like someone waking from a dream. The performer walked closer, careful not to startle him. "That was beautiful," he said softly. The boy avoided his eyes. "I didn't finish it." "You didn't have to finish it," the performer replied. "You said more in those few minutes than most people can say in a full song." The boy didn't respond, but his fingers twitched again, as if they were still playing the notes in his mind. The station was slowly getting busier as more travelers came in from the rain. Some noticed the piano and the boy standing near it, but most continued on their way. Life in the city rarely stopped for moments like this, but something inside the boy had shifted. He felt lighter somehow, not happy, not confident, but lighter. The music inside him wasn't locked away anymore. It had been heard. The performer went back to his guitar and played a simple, peaceful tune, giving the boy time to breathe. The boy walked back to the bench where he had been sitting earlier and picked up his backpack. He sat down again, holding it close, but he didn't curl up the way he usually did. He kept glancing at the piano. It was different now. Before, it had felt like something he wasn't allowed to touch. Now it felt like something he belonged to, even if only a little. A few minutes passed quietly until a woman with a small suitcase walked by. She stopped near the piano and looked at the boy, then at the performer, then back at the piano. "Who was playing earlier?" she asked, surprised. The performer nodded toward the boy. "He was." The woman's eyebrows lifted. "Him? That was him?" "Yes," the performer said with a gentle smile. The woman looked at the boy again, this time not with doubt but with astonishment. She walked over to him and spoke kindly. "Was that you playing just now?" The boy froze, gripping the strap of his backpack tightly. He didn't know how to answer. He didn't know if she was angry, impressed, or simply curious. The performer stepped in, speaking softly so the boy wouldn't feel overwhelmed. "He played beautifully." The woman nodded slowly. "It was lovely. I thought it was someone trained." The boy didn't know how to react to praise. He lowered his head, unsure whether he was supposed to thank her or remain silent. She didn't push for conversation. She gave him a warm smile and walked away after a moment. But her gentle tone left a small mark on him, a reminder that not everyone looked at him with distrust. As more people arrived at the station, the performer packed up his guitar for a short break. He walked over to the boy and sat on the bench, leaving enough space so the boy wouldn't feel crowded. "You know," the performer began softly, "you don't have to hide your music. It's a part of you." The boy didn't look up. "It doesn't matter. It matters more than you think." The boy hugged his backpack and stayed quiet. The performer continued, "When you play, people listen. They feel something. That's rare." The boy's eyes drifted to the piano again. The performer noticed and asked gently, "Do you want to play more?" The boy didn't answer, but he didn't shake his head either. Instead, he stared at the keys as though deciding whether he had enough courage left. Then something unexpected happened. A little girl walked up to the piano and began pressing random keys. She giggled with each loud, messy sound she made. Her mother stood nearby, watching with tired eyes but not stopping her. The girl continued banging the keys, enjoying the noise. The boy watched her closely. She wasn't doing anything wrong, but she was treating the piano like a toy. Each harsh note made him flinch a little, but he didn't show it. He simply watched. The performer saw the change in his expression, the quiet discomfort mixed with longing. "If you want to play," the performer said softly, "you can wait until she's done. Or you can ask politely. I bet she'd let you try." The boy shook his head quickly. He didn't want to interrupt anyone, especially a child. But after a minute, the girl suddenly stopped pressing the keys. She looked over her shoulder at the boy, who was watching her quietly. She tilted her head curiously. "Do you want to play?" she asked in her small voice. The boy's eyes widened. He didn't expect the question. He didn't know how she had noticed his interest. He opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out. The little girl smiled. "You can play if you want. I'm done." She hopped off the piano bench and ran back to her mother. The performer whispered, "Looks like she gave you permission." The boy stood slowly, like someone stepping into cold water. He walked toward the piano again, his steps careful, his breath shallow. This time, when he sat on the bench, he rested both hands on the keys without hesitation. He took one long breath, and then he began to play. This time the notes didn't come out in small pieces. They came out in full, flowing lines. His fingers moved faster, smoother, more confidently than before. The melody grew stronger, rising and falling like gentle waves. The station seemed to quiet down around him. Even though people kept coming and going, more and more travelers turned their heads. Some paused mid-step. Others stopped completely. A group of students stood nearby, whispering in amazement. An older man set down his heavy bag and listened with a soft smile. Even the woman from earlier returned, drawn back by the sound. The boy didn't see any of them. His eyes remained closed as he played, letting the music lead him. Every note carried a story he couldn't speak out loud. Every movement of his hands felt like opening a door he had kept shut for too long. The performer watched, stunned. This wasn't a child playing casually. This was someone who understood music deeply, someone who felt it in every part of his being. The boy played a gentle, emotional piece that rose higher and higher, then softened into something tender. It wasn't a famous song, at least not one the performer recognized. It sounded like something personal, something the boy had created from memory or emotion. People began recording on their phones, not for mockery or entertainment, but because the moment felt special, beautiful. A few listeners wiped their eyes quietly. The boy continued playing, unaware of the gathering crowd. His body relaxed the longer he played, his shoulders dropping, his hands gliding without fear. His music filled the station like warmth. When he finally reached the last note, he let it linger in the air before gently lifting his hands. Silence followed, and then, as if on cue, the station burst into applause. The boy's eyes snapped open. He turned sharply, startled by the sudden noise. He hadn't expected anyone to listen, let alone clap. He froze, overwhelmed. The crowd wasn't mocking him. They were smiling, genuine, warm smiles full of admiration. Some clapped loudly, others clapped softly, but all of them clapped for him. The boy swallowed hard, unsure what to do. He slowly stood up, stepping away from the piano. The performer walked at him with a proud, gentle expression. "See," he whispered, "I told you. You belong here." The boy didn't speak, but his eyes were wet, not from sadness, but from something he hadn't felt in a long time. Being seen, being heard, being valued. And though he didn't know it yet, this was only the beginning. The morning after the boy's playing filled the shelter with quiet tears. The air felt different. There was a softness in the way people moved, as if the melody he had played still floated somewhere above their heads. Some of the family still talked about it in hushed tones, as though they were afraid that speaking too loudly would break whatever gentle magic had settled in the room. The boy himself didn't seem to notice any of this. He woke up on one of the thin mattresses placed along the wall, rubbed his eyes, and slowly sat up. The blanket slipped from his shoulders, and the cold air brushed against his skin. But he didn't complain. He didn't complain about much. He was used to mornings that felt colder than this. One of the volunteers, a kind older man who always brought warm tea for anyone who wanted it, noticed him waking up. "You slept well?" the man asked. The boy nodded lightly. He rarely used more words than he needed. There were other children in the shelter too, some younger, some around his age. They usually kept to themselves, drawing in old notebooks or playing with small toys someone had donated. But for the first time, a few of them approached him. They didn't know how to ask about the piano, or even how to start a conversation with someone as quiet as he was. So they simply sat near him in silence. The boy didn't mind. He wasn't afraid of people, but he never knew what to say. Being around others without speaking felt easier. Eventually, the shelter started to wake up fully. Breakfast was set on the counter, simple food, bread, and warm porridge. People formed a line. Some laughed softly, some moved slowly, others rubbed their tired eyes. The boy joined the line and ate quietly. Still, even while he ate, the piano from the night before stayed in his mind. He had played for fun, nothing more. He never expected anyone to watch him, let alone cry because of it. One of the volunteers walked over to him while he ate. "You know," she said gently, "people haven't stopped talking about your playing. You left quite an impact last night." The boy looked up from his bowl but didn't know what to say. She smiled. Don't worry, no one is asking you to perform again. I just wanted you to know you made people feel something good. We don't get many nights like that around here. He lowered his gaze again. He didn't understand how he had made anyone feel anything. He only pressed the keys the way he always did, like breathing. Later that afternoon, the shelter grew unusually busy. More visitors than usual stepped inside. Some brought food donations, others asked questions, but a few seemed to walk around with purpose, almost as if searching for something. One of the workers noticed this and approached an older couple who looked slightly out of place. Is there something I can help you find? She asked. The couple exchanged glances. Then the woman spoke. We heard there was a young boy here, one who played the piano last night. People told us it was something special. The worker raised her eyebrows, surprised. Word travels fast. The man smiled a little. Good music travels even faster. She led them toward the common area, where the boy was sitting on the floor, folding donated clothes into a basket. He liked helping with small chores. It kept his hands busy and made time pass quietly. When the couple approached him, they crouched down to his level. Hello, the woman said warmly. We don't want to bother you. We just heard about your performance yesterday. The boy looked up, confused. Performance wasn't the right word. He hadn't performed anything. I just played, he said softly. That's exactly what we heard. The man replied with a smile. But sometimes, something small feels big to the people watching. The boy didn't answer. He wasn't sure how to respond to strangers speaking so kindly. Before they could say more, one of the shelter staff called the boy over. Someone wants to see you in the other room, she said. He stood slowly and followed her. When he stepped inside the room, he found the same upright piano he had played the night before. It looked a little brighter in the morning light, even though the keys were still chipped and the wood a little scratched. A group of people stood around it, waiting. Some were volunteers, others were visitors he didn't recognize. One of the visitors, a man with gentle eyes and a calm voice, stepped forward. I hope you don't mind, he said. We were hoping you might play again, only if you want to. There's no pressure at all. The boy froze. He hadn't expected this. He thought everyone had forgotten what happened last night. I don't have to play anything special, the man added quickly. Just whatever you like. The boy looked at the piano. His fingers twitched slightly, as if they were calling him toward the keys. He didn't know why, but he suddenly felt nervous. He wasn't used to playing in front of people. Last night had been an accident. He had been alone. No one had expected anything from him. Now, people were waiting. Watching. Hopeful. He swallowed hard. I don't know what to play, he whispered. The man smiled. Play what you feel. That's what made last night so beautiful, from what everyone said. The boy hesitated. Then, slowly, he walked toward the piano. He sat down. The bench wobbled slightly beneath him, but he didn't mind. He touched one key, then another. The sound was a bit out of tune, but it felt familiar now. Finally, he placed both hands on the keyboard. The room grew still, and he began. This time, his playing was different, not louder or faster, not even more complicated, but it held something deeper. Maybe it was the awareness that people were listening. Maybe it was the memory of the tears he had seen the night before. Maybe it was simply the quiet understanding that, for the first time in a long while, people wanted something from him. Not pity, not sympathy, not questions, just music. He played a slow, gentle tune. It rose softly and fell softly, like someone breathing through a long sleep. The people behind him remained silent, not wanting to break the moment. Halfway through, the boy paused. His hands trembled a little. He wasn't used to attention. He wasn't used to being seen. But when he glanced behind him, he saw calm faces, kind ones. So he continued. When he finished, no one clapped. They didn't want to interrupt the feeling in the room. Instead, the man with gentle eyes stepped forward again. That, he said softly, was beautiful. Others nodded in agreement. The woman who had come with the older couple wiped her eyes. Before the boy could try to stand, the man crouched beside him. Would you like to come by our music center sometime? He asked gently. We teach kids, beginners, all sorts of students. You don't have to join anything. You can just come and play. We'd love to have you. The boy stared at him in disbelief. A music center, a place where people played every day, a place where he could touch real pianos, not broken ones found by chance. I don't have money, the boy whispered. You don't need any, the man said. Just bring yourself. The boy had no words. He looked down at his hands. The ones that had always seemed so useless, hands that couldn't keep him warm at night, couldn't find him at home, couldn't change anything about his life. Yet somehow, these same hands had brought people into a room just to hear him play. Think about it, the man said gently. Come if you ever feel ready. The visitors thanked the shelter staff and began to leave. Some smiled at the boy on their way out. When the room emptied, the boy sat alone on the bench. His fingers traveled slowly across the keys, not to play but to feel the smoothness of them. A music center. Someone wanted him. Someone believed he had something to offer. He wasn't sure what to do with that feeling, but for the first time in a long time, he felt the future quietly shifting, opening just a little. Like a window someone had left unlocked. The boy let his hands rest on the piano. He wasn't ready yet, but maybe soon. The moment the boy finished playing, the station fell into the softest silence. It wasn't the uncomfortable kind, it was the kind that comes when people feel something too big to speak about right away. The air felt almost warm, heavy with emotion, as if the walls, the floor, and even the air vents were holding their breath to not break the moment. The boy slowly lifted his hands from the keys. His fingers trembled a little, not because he was tired, but because he didn't know what would happen next. He wasn't used to eyes being on him. He wasn't used to people listening, much less caring. But in front of him stood a growing circle of people, travelers, workers, parents, kids, each one with a softened expression, as if they had felt something deep inside their hearts. Some wiped tears from their eyes quietly. Some stared at him in disbelief. Others simply looked grateful, as though he had given them a gift they didn't expect. The boy didn't say anything. He didn't know what to say. He didn't even know how to take the attention. His shoulders curled slightly as if he wanted to shrink back into the small, hidden corner he came from. But then the performer, the same man who had encouraged him earlier, stepped forward. He didn't clap loudly. Instead, he smiled in a gentle, emotional way, and then he started to clap slowly, softly. The sound echoed across the station. That clap broke the silence. Soon others joined. The quiet clapping grew into steady applause, and then, without warning, the sound exploded into a standing ovation. People clapped with both hands, some cheering, some smiling so widely it looked like their faces couldn't hold the emotion. The boy stared at them, wide-eyed. He wasn't used to applause. He wasn't used to appreciation. He wasn't used to kindness. He felt his throat tighten, not in fear, not in sadness, but in a strange, warm way he didn't fully understand. Someone from the crowd stepped forward and placed a warm drink on the piano, a cup of hot chocolate from a nearby stall. Another placed a small pack of food beside it. A third person, an older woman, gently touched the edge of the piano and said, "Thank you, child." Her voice trembled. The boy didn't reach for anything. He just sat there, frozen, confused, overwhelmed by the attention he never expected. The performer walked closer and crouched beside him, speaking softly so only he could hear. "You did that," he whispered. "You touched their hearts. That was all you." The boy blinked, still unsure whether he believed it. "You're special," the performer continued, "and don't let yourself think otherwise." The boy looked down at his hands, the same hands that had slept in cold places, carried bags, hugged his backpack tightly for warmth, and now created music that made strangers cry. He exhaled slowly. As the applause faded, a few people approached the performer, whispering questions. "Who is he? Where did he learn to play? Is he a student of yours?" The performer shook his head gently. "He's just a boy with a gift, not a homeless boy, not a forgotten boy, just a boy with a gift." The boy didn't hear all the conversations clearly, but he could sense the tone. People weren't judging him. They weren't pushing him away. They weren't whispering hurtful assumptions like before. Tonight, they were seeing him. A woman approached him next, holding her phone carefully. She bent down so she wouldn't tower over him. "Is it okay if I record another song?" she asked politely. The boy froze again. His heart beat fast. He didn't like cameras. He didn't like the idea of being recorded. He didn't know what would happen to the video or who would see it. But before he could respond, the performer gently stepped in. "Let's not pressure him," he said kindly. "He played from the heart tonight. That's enough." The woman nodded respectfully and stepped back. The boy felt relieved but still overwhelmed. He finally reached for the cup of hot chocolate. His hands wrapped around it carefully, as though he feared it would vanish if he held it too tight. The warm steam hit his face, and he closed his eyes for a second, savoring the warmth. It felt like comfort. It felt like safety. It felt like something he hadn't experienced in a long time. The performer sat beside him on the piano bench. "You know," he said gently, "you don't have to disappear again tomorrow. You can come here. Play anytime you want. People need your music." The boy looked at him with uncertainty. The performer continued, "And if you ever want help, food, warm clothes, someone to talk to, I'm here most days. You're not alone, kid." Those words hit the boy harder than the applause. Not alone. He had forgotten what that even felt like. The station slowly became quieter again as people left for their trains. The bright lights dimmed to their evening glow, and the air felt calm. The boy and the performer sat quietly, listening to the sound of night trains arriving and leaving. After some time, the performer stood up. "I have to go now," he said, "but I'll see you tomorrow, all right?" The boy hesitated, then gave a soft nod. The performer smiled warmly and packed up his guitar. Before leaving, he softly added, "You're brave. Don't forget that." When the performer left the station, the boy stayed on the piano bench a little longer. He touched the keys lightly one more time, letting a quiet, gentle sound slip into the empty space. It felt like closure. It felt like a new beginning. He finally stood up and picked up his backpack. But before walking back to his usual corner, he turned to look at the piano one more time. Tonight, it wasn't just a piano. It was a place that allowed him to be seen. A place that reminded him he still had something to offer the world. A place that gave him hope. The boy walked to his corner, feeling a warmth inside his chest that the cold station air couldn't take away. As he settled down for the night, he didn't feel as invisible as before. The memory of the applause echoed in his mind, each clap reminding him of something he had forgotten: his worth. Somewhere deep inside him, a quiet belief began to grow. Tomorrow would come, and maybe, just maybe, he wouldn't be afraid of it anymore. For the first time in a long while, the boy closed his eyes, not with fear or sadness, but with a small, fragile sense of peace. A future he never imagined before had just opened its door. And it all started with a single moment. A moment when they let a homeless boy play for fun and his music made everyone weep.